This is the Dover Download Podcast. My name is Christopher Parker, and for the past 25 years, I've had the pleasure of working with, learning from, and talking to a variety of volunteer, staff, and community members. This podcast explores conversations, activities, and a variety of policies and programs which exist here in Dover to improve the community in one way or another. It should not come to the surprise of any listener that one of the things we try to do here in Dover is follow our master plan. In order to follow a master plan, you have to have a master plan, and we have been very creatively working on about a chapter a year for the past 20 years, breaking them up and focusing the volunteer efforts as well as our consulting and staff efforts on particular topics. Today, we're going to talk about the transportation chapter of the master plan, which is currently underway. Joining me today is Donna Benton, our Director of Planning and Community Development, and Christine Triakas from VHB, the consultant working on the project. Ladies, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us this morning.
So, Donna, I'm right in that maybe not annually, but pretty close to once a year, you work on a chapter for the master plan.
We do. Sometimes the way the year falls, it kind of covers 2 years. But yes, we are basically constantly working on updating a master plan chapter at any given point. And
transportation, is that an easy chapter, a hard chapter,
It's one of our most technical chapters. It comes with the highest cost to update, and that's because of all the technical knowledge needed and the data needed to update the chapter. And so we are taking our time and making sure that we get this transportation chapter update correct.
And what's that like for your end, Christine? What's involved on the consultant side for these chapters?
So from the consultant side, we have, I will say our scope is fairly prescriptive and is, I think, mirrors what we did about 10 years ago as well. But the data is always changing, right? So from our side, we are looking at establishing an updated baseline condition. So right now, we're kind of in our data collection and exploration phase where we're just collecting a wealth of data, trying to reestablish what the current baseline is. We also then look to the vision. So there's an updated vision plan now from where we were at 10 years ago, and we'll look at our baseline and the vision and where are the gaps between those two. And then the rest of the plan is really about developing a toolkit for the city, as well as some recommendations of how to prioritize your investments into transportation to get you to that vision.
So you mentioned that 10 years ago, VHB did the chapter you're replacing.
Correct.
How much of that previous work is still relevant? I mean, do you go back at it from the standpoint of, I'm curious as to what was on it? Or do you go back at it and say, this is the starting point to update?
So we will look back at it as kind of a lessons learned and where are we now based on 10 years ago. I think we can all appreciate that data has come a long way in the last 10 years. So the data we're looking at now is not necessarily the same data set that we looked at 10 years ago. It's much more expansive. And we just have a lot more options right now in terms of that data and how we layer it and try to draw conclusions.
Donna, typically a master plan chapter has a lot of outreach component, a lot of community involvement. Is there a steering committee for this chapter?
There is. We do have a steering committee of 7 members, and we made sure that there's a representative from City Council, the Planning Board, the Community Trail Advisory Committee, and the Transportation Advisory Committee, as well as some at-large members. We have bicyclists on the steering committee. We have pedestrians, people that drive cars, obviously. So we're trying to make sure that all users were represented. And then even if you're not on the steering committee, we're making sure that there's opportunities for the public to provide feedback first before we get too far in the update, but then also towards the end to kind of show the draft and see how well we did with it.
And what kind of outreach do you plan on? I know in the past you've done Apple Harvest Day, you've done things of that nature. What sort of outreach are you looking to do?
We'll definitely continue with some tabling events such as Apple Harvest Day this fall. We're putting together a survey right now. The consultant team is thinking of the questions, and then that will be run by the steering committee first, and then that should be available sometime this summer into the fall. We've also put together a list of organizations and groups for interviews, like stakeholder interviews and focus groups. So we're kind of trying to go about it in a multifaceted approach.
Do you look at it from the standpoint of transit and transportation providers or riders and users?
Both.
Both. Okay.
So we've invited Coast to participate. We've invited Coast riders to participate. We're trying to make sure that we're hitting as many different audiences as possible.
How do you do that, Christine? How do you make sure that you're hitting all of those? To me, transportation is probably the most varied audiences. right? It's not just the bicyclists. It's not just the pedestrians. In one form or another, all of us use transportation.
You are correct. And it's certainly a challenge to make sure you're getting all voices heard in this. That's why we are doing a wide variety of public engagement. So the tabling events at something like Apple Harvest Day, having these focus group kind of stakeholder interviews, and then a survey, which we're really hoping that the city and the steering committee will partner with us on making sure that gets out to the public and reaches a wide range of your residents and users to your facilities to be able to get all of those different opinions.
Well, you're lucky because there are 35,000 traffic engineers that live in this city. So we should have great response.
Yes, everyone is a traffic engineer if you own a car or use any of the public facilities.
What sorts of sections go in this chapter? What sort of elements are you reviewing and considering?
So from an existing conditions data standpoint, right now we are looking at just a wealth of information. So we look at, vehicular volumes on the roadways. We look at pedestrian and bicycle networks. We look at metrics, something called the bicycle and pedestrian level of traffic stress, which is really just a number assigned on how comfortable those facilities are on each facility. So we look at roadway links as well as intersections. And we have a map of all of Dover right now for each of those for pedestrians and bicycles and seeing kind of where the comfortable areas are for those users and where the uncomfortable areas are. We look at crash information. We look at the transit routes and the ridership on those routes. One of the things that I think has evolved a lot over the last 10 plus years is how we layer data too. So we used to look at something like the roadway inventory layer, and we look at sidewalk gaps and see where are there sidewalks within your community and where are there gaps. We now know that we can layer that over, say, your transit bus stop network. And then you can look at, where are there sidewalk gaps within a quarter mile of your bus stop. So you're really getting at kind of that last mile connection and providing people mode choice instead of just, oh, there's no sidewalks on this roadway, so we should put them in here, right? Trying to be a little bit more strategic and intentional with recommendations. Once we get past the existing conditions kind of baseline, we will then establish, the gaps, the issues, the opportunities, and the constraints is what we like to say. And then we're going to look to future conditions. So we're going to test different future alternatives based on different land use alternatives in the future. You have a lot of development going on right now, especially close to your downtown. So we will look at those. We will then look at a whole bunch of different tools for you. So the plan is intended to be really a recommendation of initiatives for your community and a toolkit of how to get there. So we're going to develop a series of cross sections for all different types of roadways, right? There is no one cross section that would fit every roadway in your community, and you need to have options, right? So when you go to design a roadway or think this roadway could be improved, what are our options based on the right-of-way and the users and the volume and things like that? And all of this to say this is going to be encompassed into a what is hopefully a succinct, straightforward master plan with a clear implementation schedule.
So when does the canal get built? Don, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
We are a 400-year-old community with walking paths that became cow paths, that became cart paths, that became roadways. Nothing's changing. Why study the transportation network? Because it's all built.
There are opportunities still even within our limited right-of-way compared to if you look out west and you go to different communities, their right-of-way is so huge that they have even more opportunities. We need to be more creative here in Dover in that whether it's the use of sharrows instead of a true multi-use path along each road network, we do have options in that we do bring in professional teams to look at those so that we can be creative and figure out the best way to improve transportation networks here in Dover specifically.
Christine, as you've been looking at this chapter, but then I assume you've worked on other chapters for other communities, are there things you look for when you go into a project to say, all right, this was a gem in community X. I'm hoping we can come to community Y and see opportunities for that as well? Or do you go in with a blank slate?
I think it's a combination of the two. Every community is different, and we want to look at it kind of with that fresh perspective. But yes, if there were really successful recommendations or implementations in other communities, we do look at those and see, would that be a good fit for this community? But it needs to be a match, right? You can't take a really rural community and slap something that worked there into your downtown.
You're not pulling the New Dover plan off the shelf and replacing New Dover with Dover.
Correct.
How many folks are on your team? I know Donna mentioned the steering committee and the membership there. How many, I assume, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's not just you doing all the work.
No, certainly not just me. So VHP, which is the company I work for, we actually partnered with Stratford Regional Planning Commission.
Great.
They have been a true partner in this. It was a very exciting opportunity when we first started having these discussions. We've partnered with them on a number of things, including the SS4A safety action plan for this region. And both of us have done work with Dover before. So it was very exciting. So the leads for our SRPC team are Colin Lentz and Jen Siz. They have a whole slew of team members. When we've had meetings with them, I think there's at least 10 other folks there who are helping to support that. And then from the VHB end, there are 3 of us who I would say are main contributors, but our office is 100 people deep, and we certainly pull resources from all different departments. We'll have our transportation groups, our planning groups, and our GIS groups all involved in this.
Donna had mentioned earlier the data and the technical aspects of this. I assume there's modeling that just goes on and on and on to help you review options.
Yes. Sometimes there's almost too much data, and it's hard to focus on exactly, where to pull the most valuable information. But we have a lot of GIS-based models, and then we also will be working with the travel demand model for the region. So we already work with SRPC on making sure that is updated and current. So our team will be taking that travel demand model, and that's how we're going to test those future land use alternatives.
From the city standpoint, Donna, what's it like having the 2 consultants working together?
I think it's great. I think it brings on an entity that is more focused on the public engagement side and kind of local and knows Dover, as well as VHB, which is larger and has more of that technical knowledge and engineering experience. So I think it's a good partnership.
And like VHB, SRPC has done work for us before in the master plan world too.
They have. Yep. They did a couple chapters for us in the recent past.
When it comes to cost, you mentioned that this is the most costly of the chapters. Are we talking $10 more? Are we talking $15 more? What are we talking?
This chapter came in just under $100,000, and typically we have $35,000 to $40,000 budgeted in our budget for a master plan chapter. So this is definitely much more expensive than our typical master plan update. And I think a large part of that is due to the modeling and the technical nature of it and how much detail needs to go into that update.
From VHB's standpoint, do you encounter other communities that are doing it the way we do by breaking it into chapter, or do you see more of the global umbrella master plan work?
More often, I personally have seen more of the global comprehensive master plan where they do, it will take a few years, but they do the entire thing at once. There are other communities that break off a chapter at a time to make it, I think, a little bit more manageable.
Donna, do you still think that's the best route to go?
I do. I like that we're constantly thinking of our master plan and updating it. And that way, all of the chapters kind of weave in and out of each other as well. So the fact that we recently did our land use chapter and our vision chapter a couple years ago, I think it's been helpful rather than waiting 10 to 15 years and trying to do an overhaul. I think that sets communities up sometimes to just leave it on the shelf after it's been completed instead of constantly trying to implement the action items in the master plan.
I will say having an updated vision and land use chapter very recently really helps inform and guide the transportation chapter, because those are really big components of what dictates where we go.
It's a chicken and egg. What comes first, transportation or land use?
Yeah.
Right?
They go very much hand in hand.
This chapter is significant, and it replaces a significant chapter. I remember that one, that the last one probably took 15 to 18 months to wrap through because it is so intense in the data analysis. Is that your expectation now that you've started this spring, but you won't be completed until early next year?
Yeah, we're looking at possible adoption early, sometime in the spring of 2027.
And so walk the listener through what's adoption like. What happens? Is it on a ballot? Is it a referendum? How does it work?
So once we have a draft and we've gotten public feedback from the draft, we bring it to the planning board, who holds a public hearing and does the review. Usually our consultant team does a presentation, either at the land use meet and greet with all the different land use boards being represented, but definitely at the planning board meeting as well. Again, we hold the public hearing, and then it's the planning board is the entity that decides on the adoption and can vote to adopt the chapter when they feel it's been completed and accurate.
From the consultant standpoint, what's the benchmark for success?
The benchmark for success will likely come over the course of the next 10 years. You know, the goal of any master plan is to not have it live on a shelf, but be an actual living document that you can continue to come back to and evolve. So the benchmark of success is really going to be 10 years from now. Are we at your vision for 2040, or have we somehow missed the mark?
What's your thought?
I agree. I think the being able to either update the capital improvements program based off the transportation chapter and other master plan chapters, or just seeing how well we've done on the different action items and recommendations throughout time. But also, I think part of that being able to measure success is how often do we turn back to it and actually review it and look at it when we're making either policy decisions or budget decisions, to make sure that we're abiding by the master plan, because we've taken such care to try to get so much public input and make sure it's truly the vision of the community.
Speaking of public input, what's the best way for people to be engaged in this project?
They can certainly reach out to myself, and I can try to keep them updated. We will be keeping updates in our planning e-newsletter that goes out every other week. We'll be teaming up with media services to try to put things such as the survey opportunity into the Dover download, so people can stay aware on that. If they are at National Night Out or Apple Harvest Day, come visit our booth and figure out where we are in the process. But feel free to reach out at any time.
Great. One last question. I know for a while there was a certain look and feel to the master plan work, and then you've evolved it. Are you back to we've evolved it and now we're sticking with the look and feel, or are you continually looking to improve readability and accessibility of it?
So we're always looking to improve the readability and accessibility, in that I think we are trying to make sure that it's easily digestible, instead of just having 140 pages of a document, that we either have the executive summary or some visuals so that people understand, instead of reading through all of it, that they get a Reader's Digest version of it.
From the consultant standpoint, anything else we should be telling the listener? Anything else that we should hear from you today?
I think your community right now, this is a really exciting time. We're excited to conduct this chapter for you, and we are open to as much input as the public would like to give us. If it's going to work for everyone in the community, we need to hear from all of you.
That's great to hear. I will end for myself. I'll end on the note of having been in Donna's position 10 years ago. I really enjoyed working with VHB. It was a great experience. Working with Robin and Marty was a really good eye-opener as to what can be potential. And I look forward to seeing the work you and Stratford Regional provide for the city this year.
Thank you. I certainly hope I can live up to the expectations of Robin and Marty, because they are legends in their own right.
I'm sure they are. Donna, anything you want to close out on?
Or just say that in addition to kind of transportation and moving modes, part of this study also includes a parking study as well. So we'd be looking at parking utilization. We'll be actually surveying kind of the downtown and adjacent areas on foot, and seeing where the parking spaces are available, where they're being utilized. And that way we can kind of see how things have changed, both with COVID and kind of more people working remotely, but then also now going back to the offices and seeing where we are and if we need to update anything in terms of parking.
So once you've transported someplace and you actually have to park your vehicle,
Right.
Your bike or what have you, how that utilization is.
Exactly. So that is part of this update as well.
Great. Look forward to future updates and to the wrap up early next year. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you
Thanks
for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Dover has a wealth of history in its over 400 years of existence. Coming up, Mike Gillis is going to share some of that history with us.
Early on the morning of August 3rd, 1933, a fire started at Dover's City Hall. It was Dover's third City Hall, the previous two having burned down, and was located where today's City Hall now stands. Although early in the morning, City Hall, then, was also home to police headquarters in the city jail, which was occupied by 16 prisoners when the fire broke out. Prisoners who were either being held on minor offenses or were listed as vagrants were evacuated from the building's basement through smoke-filled corridors, along with the police officers. The fire quickly consumed the massive 4-story brick building, which included a grand opera house and an 80-foot-tall clock tower. Dover's fire chief at the time said the fire was first spotted when it broke through the roof of the opera house and had likely been burning for some time and quickly spread throughout the building. Despite the efforts of Dover, Somersworth, Portsmouth, Berwick, Farmington, and Rochester firefighters, by daybreak, just hours later, City Hall was nothing more than crumbling walls. The evacuated prisoners were moved to the county farm, and police and city officials immediately moved into temporary offices nearby. It was a terrible loss for the city. As the seat for municipal government, it was home to many vital records and documents, much of which was lost in the fire. The City Hall and Opera House had stood for 41 years, having been dedicated on December 16, 1891. The magnificent building, which had cost $250,000 to build, featured a floor in the Opera House that could rise and fall, a chandelier with 95 electric bulbs, 3 tiers of boxes with brass rails, velvet curtains with gold fringe, a frescoed ceiling, and a Cupid mural. The Opera House could seat 1,800 people, the largest stage of its kind in New Hampshire. Among those who performed there were many luminaries of the day, including Jason Robards, Alfred Lunt, Shirley Booth, and John Philip Sousa's band. The first full-length movie shown here was Birth of a Nation, starring Lillian Gish. The fire was thought to have started by spontaneous combustion. By the next year, in 1934, the construction of a new City Hall was underway. Without fanfare, the new building's cornerstone was laid on September 19, 1934. In addition to stone boxes from 1834 and 1890, another containing historical records was also placed with the cornerstone. The new City Hall, which was constructed for $303,000, opened completely in 1935 and remains in service to the citizens of Dover today.
Thanks for listening to the Dover Download this week. If you like what you heard, subscribe through your favorite podcast aggregator. And if you have something you want to hear a topic on, let us know. Finally, this is just one of the many ways we share information about the city of Dover. You can subscribe to the Dover Downloads email newsletter every week or other newsletters that we have by going to the City of Dover homepage, www.dover.nh.gov. Have a great week.